Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the Fourth Crusade and why it failed. So the Fourth Crusade was called and launched by Pope Innocent III under the desire to reclaim Jerusalem after the failure of the Third Crusade to take it back, following Saladin's capture of the city in 1187. Now, although the Third Crusade had reclaimed much land and essentially brought back the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Jerusalem still maintained under Ayyubid dynasty control, aka Saladin's control. So in January 1198, Pope Innocent III became the new pope. He immediately began preaching for a new crusade as it was his main objective, and he passed the papal bull Post Miserabile. However, the European monarchs this time did not take up the call. This was due to the fact that France and England were in a war. Now, that war was known as the First 100 Years' War, not to be confused with the main 100 Years' War that happened 100 years later. And also, the German monarchs were busy challenging papal rule, as it was part of their main focus that they tended to do, where the Holy Roman Empire would always challenge the popes and create anti-popes. But that's something for another video. And also the monarchs of the Iberian Peninsula, so the monarchs of Castile, Aragon, and Portugal, were busy with the Reconquista. Now, of course, there were kingdoms in the Baltic, most notably the Teutonic Knights, but they were, of course, busy crusading in the Baltics. So it was mainly due to dukes and nobles, along with Crusader knights such as the Hospitallers and Templars. Finally, however, in 1199, at a jousting tournament, an army was organised under Count Theobat, but he died in 1201, so it was replaced by Boniface of Montferrat. The plan for the crusade was to invade via Egypt and then take Jerusalem. So instead of going directly to Jerusalem, they'd go via navy, take the southern Egyptian cities, Cairo, then go up the Middle East and essentially then take Jerusalem. However, they needed a navy because, of course, they didn't have the natural naval requirements. So they went to the Italian city-states. The reason being is that the Italian city-states of Venice, Milan, Genoa were all master shipbuilders. But they didn't receive any answers back until March 1201, when the current Doge of Venice, Enrico Dandolo, agreed to transport 500 crusaders. Now, the Doge of Venice chose this because he had the impression that he'd make lots of money, because he knew he could sack the Holy Land and also just rob the crusaders of all their money. Now, in total, the expected crusaders who'd go was 4,500 knights with 4,500 horses, 9,000 squires, and 20,000 foot soldiers. And in October 1202, the crusaders began to leave their homes towards Venice, while the fleet was prepared to launch on the 24th of June 1203. However, the main problem was there was no main agreement amongst the crusaders that they should all go via Venice, so many left for Genoa and other French cities, and some went via the land route that the First and Second Crusade, and as part of the Third Crusade, went. So in May 1202, the bulk of the crusaders arrived in Venice, but instead of the 33,500 crusaders that was originally imagined, only 12,000 crusaders arrived. Now, the Venetians had prepared 50 war galleys and 450 transports, which was enough for 3 times that army size. But the Doge still demanded the original payment of 85,000 silver marks. This was due to the fact that the Doge of Venice had placed a lot of money towards building this fleet, as not only was it incredibly expensive to build these war galleys and transports, it also required incredible manpower from Venice. Now, Venice only had a relatively small population at the time, so it required a lot of oarsmen and other such things, so it was a massive economic loss, essentially. So the Crusaders in total could only pay when he first demanded 35,000 marks, but after more demands, the Crusaders then paid another 14,000 marks. However, that left many of the Crusaders in poverty with nothing. The Doge decided in that case that in order to make his money worth, the Crusaders would have to attack across the Adriatic coast and take Zara. The problem was Zara was a Catholic city, but it was once ruled by Venice, but they had rebelled and joined King Emeric of Hungary. Now, King Emeric of Hungary had actually taken up the cross and agreed to join this crusade. This resulted in many of the Crusaders leaving to go to the Holy Lands via land routes or taking their own boats and going different ways, because they did not want to be part of this. The Pope also did not like this, as he then said that anyone who attacked Zara would be excommunicated. However, this concept of excommunication was hidden from the foot soldiers, fearing that it would demoralize them. And on the 10th and 11th of November 1202, the Crusaders arrived at Zara. Now, the citizens of Zara are, of course, confused by this due to the fact that they were Catholic and were not understanding why they were being attacked by a Catholic crusading force. They initially thought that the Christian soldiers were confused where they were, and they hung Catholic cross banners on their battlements and windows to try and show that they were Catholic. However, of course, the Crusaders knew where they were and continued the siege. And on the 24th of November 1202, Zara fell and was demolished and ransacked by Venetian soldiers, who then, of course, brought it back into their control. The Pope then sent a letter to the Crusaders excommunicating them, but this news again was not shared with the Crusaders and kept only by the leaders and the clergy, fearing that it would demoralise the troops. The next part of the siege would come far later, though, and it would be the worst part of the Fourth Crusade. Now, due to rebellious natures within the Byzantine Empire, which had a very complex system of how an emperor would be elected, Isaac II Angelos, who was the first emperor, was deposed along with his son Alexios IV Angelos. Now, they went to the Crusaders promising 200,000 silver marks, 10,000 Byzantine troops, and a navy to use to take Cairo with. They also promised that the Eastern Orthodox Church would go under the Pope if they would just simply topple the new emperor who had deposed his father, Alexios III Angelos, who was the new emperor. Now, of course, the Crusaders knew that this was such a good offer because, of course, A, they hadn't received much of their funding, and B, it would end the Great Schism that had happened, which essentially had divided the two churches. Now, this offer reached the Crusaders on the 1st of January 1203. So, again, most of the Crusaders agreed, but some also left the Crusade and went on their own ways. Now, upon hearing this, the Pope issued that the Crusaders were not to attack other Christians unless those Christians directly hindered the Crusade. And on the 23rd of June 1203, the Crusaders arrived at Constantinople, which was defended by its legendary triple walls. Now, these triple walls had been besieged multiple times and never had fallen. They were part of some of the greatest defences and castle building that Europe and Asia Minor and the Middle East had essentially ever seen. Constantinople was essentially a fortress that was also a city. It was well defended. The Golden Horn, which was the route that was used that led into the Black Sea, that also held the Byzantine fleet, was protected by a giant chain that prevented ships from entering. And it was also kept with a strong garrison of 15,000 soldiers, 5,000 of which were Varangian guards, the elite of the Byzantine Empire. Now, Varangians were not actually always Byzantine citizens. A lot of them were Vikings from Norway and Sweden, Denmark. This was because they would sail to Constantinople and be employed by the Byzantine emperors. Now, it's oftentimes that Varangians are compared to the Praetorian Guards of the Roman Empire. However, Varangians were far more loyal and didn't tend to assassinate the emperor as much. And on the 1st of August, Alexios the Fourth was proclaimed co-emperor along with Isaac II, ending the siege. Now, this was due to the fact that Alexios IV had made the deal with the Crusaders, not Isaac II. So the Crusaders trusted Alexios IV more. Now, what happened to Alexios III, you may wonder? Well, he fled the city and abandoned it, which resulted in the siege being not as bad as it could have been, not as bad as the sack was. However, Alexius could not pay the Crusaders the full amount and only managed 100,000 silver marks. This was due to the fact that when Alexios III fled, he took with him most of the wealth of Constantinople. So Alexios IV was forced to melt down lots of Roman iconography, which of course was never seen again. But in January 1204, Isaac II died, leaving only Alexios IV. But the people of Byzantium hated him, seeing him as a traitor that worked with the Latins. And in February 1204, Alexios Doukas, who was elected to be the new emperor by the Byzantine Senate, which was essentially a continuation of the Roman Senate, overthrew Alexios IV and had him strangled and killed. Now, the Crusaders demanded that the new emperor, Alexios V, which was what he claimed, continue the deal, but Alexios declined, and so began the sack on Constantinople. It began on the 8th of April 1204. And on the 12th of April 1204, the Crusaders entered the city, and on the 13th, it was under Crusader rule. Now, the sack lasted 3 days. Sacks in medieval Europe and the Middle East tended to only ever last a few days, as of course it was very much against the religion of the people, but it was tend to be overlooked. It's believed that 900,000 silver marks were looted. The other important bits were looted were lots of iconography, books were burnt, libraries destroyed, 15,000 were left homeless through fires. But not only this, the great walls that were cast out of bronze that were outside of the Senate building and other such buildings were relocated to Venice and stolen. And although some Crusaders did make it to the Holy Lands, it was never enough to retake Jerusalem. But why did all of this happen? Why did it fail? Well, this was due to the fact that the Doge of Venice and essentially the city of Venice hated Byzantium. See, Byzantium stood on the most important step and gateway in the world. It was the gateway to Asia Minor, which then led on to Asia. It was the gateway to the Silk Road, which, if you don't know, was the most important trading route ever. It was so important that it was prioritized even by the Mongols, who were busy burning down cities. Now, why was it so important? It linked China, India, and Europe together, along with Japan and Korea. So Venice wanted it. This was mainly because they wanted to control trade, but the Byzantines controlled it, so they couldn't control it. Therefore, they paid far more money. So the Crusaders were used as tools by the Doge of Venice to take Byzantium. Now, it can be argued that if the Crusade had gone correctly and all the Crusaders arrived in Venice to pay the full amount, then perhaps it wouldn't have happened. But in all honesty, it most likely would have happened no matter what, as they would have sailed via Constantinople. Now, following this, the Byzantine Empire was ruined, and although it was eventually unified and the Latin false emperors were removed, it never truly recovered, and this sack resulted in a massive decline in essentially the greatest empire the medieval world saw. It resulted in hundreds of books being destroyed, along with hundreds of thousands of historically important artifacts being melted down or destroyed. It then, of course, later leads to the fall of Constantinople, later to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, which then, of course, later leads to the discovery of the Americas, but that's a time for another video. So overall, the Fourth Crusade failed due to greed and a desire for wealth. However, it should not be forgotten what was sacrificed for the greed of the Venetians. Thank you for watching.